morning. I'm going to discuss competitive rivalry. This is on chapter 5 and supposedly it will be part of your second. So we finally decide that this topic will be included in your third exam. Our objective on this chapter is to discuss the model of competitive rivalry. So there is competition if the firms are operating in the same market, they are targeting the similar customers and even in similar or geographical areas. So it is called competitors. So we need to study this model because this will help us to gain competitive advantage towards our competitors. So the model is composed of four factors. So the first one is competitor analysis, which we will analyze the market commonality, the resource similarity of our competitors. Second is the drivers of competitive behavior in terms of awareness, motivation, and ability. The third one is competitive rivalry, the actions of the firm in regards to the likelihood of attack and the response of their competitive actions. The last one is the outcome, either on the market position or on the financial performance. So this model will help us. So again, as we have encountered many competitors in the market, we usually engage in competitive rivalry. Why? Because we need to gain an advantageous market position. So how would you achieve that position? You can achieve it through your competitive behavior, either competitive actions or response. And then what would be the result? So this is related to the outcome, the competitive dynamics, no, in response to the competing market. Let us first define what is competitive behavior and competitive rivalry. So competitive behavior is the essential or the set of actions and responses a firm takes as it competes against its rivals, while competitive rivalry is the ongoing set of competitive actions and the competitive responses that occur among firms as they maneuver for an advantageous market position. So this is very important, especially for those leading organizations to understand their competitive rivalry because in reality, this firm, if they know the strength, the weaknesses of their competitors, they can outperform their competitors. So meaning this competitive rivalry can influence the individual's ability to gain and sustain their competitive advantage. Let's say, for example, in the Google company, before the Google company is a small firm or small business, and then their competitor is Yahoo. Being before the Yahoo um, is on the top performing search engine, but now Google already get the competitive advantage over their competitors. So how they do it? So basically, they have this knowledge on the model and they analyze their competitors in terms of on the model, the market, and on the resources, and this knowledge help them to get competitive advantage towards or over their competitor. Another definition that we need to know is the multi-market competition and the competitive dynamics. So when we say multi-market competition, this is when firms compete against each other in several products or geographic markets. So say for example, the Coca-Cola and the Pepsi-Cola. So they have several products. They also compete on the geographic, no, in Mindanao, Luzon, and Visayas. Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. So, on the other hand, competitive dynamics, this is the total set of actions the responses taken by all firms competing within their market. So this is their strategy on how to compete their market. So this is in relation to our previous topic, the business level model. The first part of our competitive rivalry model is the competitor analysis. So this is the first step. This is a technique on understanding the competitive environment, their competitors, studying their future objectives, their current strategies, their assumptions, and their capabilities. So here you will predict the extent and nature of your rivalry. So you will consider their market commonality and the resource similarity. So when we say market commonality, it is the number of markets in which firms compete against each other. While for resource similarity, this is the similarity in the markets in which firms compete against each other. So let's say for example, so our example for market commonality is Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola. Again, market commonality is very concerned with the number of markets with which the firm and a competitor are jointly involved and the degree of importance of the individual market to each. So say for example, Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Cola, they compete each other across a number of products markets. So they have their soft drinks, they have also their bottled water, and they also compete in geographic markets, so Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. When we say market commonality, it's very common that in every industry they have various markets. So, another example is the financial services industry, which they market on insurance, brokerage services, banks, and so forth. So they concentrate on the needs of different unique customer groups, and they have markets can be further subdivided. So say for example, in the insurance market, it could be broken into market segments like commercial and consumer, and it can also broken into product segments, health insurance, life insurance. When we say geographic market, so you can you, it could be in Luzon, in Visayas, or in the Mindanao. So again, this market commonality is very important in analyzing your competitors. So how about today? We have also the e-commerce. E-commerce capabilities. Let's say, for example, the Amazon, the other one for the China, the Alibaba. So they also compete with each other. So you need to look on their market commonality. You need to know who are their markets. Either their markets is baby boomers. Their markets is based on the age and also on the gender. So you need to understand those commonality of their markets. Resource similarity is the extent to which the firm's tangible and intangible resources are comparable to a competitor's in terms of both type and amount. So usually, firms with similar types and amounts of resources are likely to have similar strengths and weaknesses. So because they use similar strategies on the basis of their strengths to pursue also similar opportunities in the external environment. So example here is FedEx and UPS. So this company, they are cargo business and they have similar trucks and airplanes fleet. So usually they use similar trucks. So just put their cargo there and pay for the transportation on that particular trucks or particular airplane. So resource similarity describes part of the relationship between these companies. So they compete many of the same market and they are also accurately described as having market commonality. So for example, on these firms, they have similar types of trucks, the airplanes, and they have also similar levels of financial capital and usually rely on equally talented reservoirs of human capital along with their sophisticated information technology system, their resources. So they have the software, they have similar resources. So you need to understand it, no? Whether they have their resource similarity and also, of course, their market commonality, so that after understanding this, it would be part of your strategies that you can compete with each other. What would be your advantage over your competitors? Next, the third component of our rivalry model is the drivers of the competitive behavior. Okay, so since market commonality and of course resource similarity influence the drivers of competitive behavior, so we have our drivers here, um, are awareness, motivation, and ability. So, in turn, these drivers influence the firm's actual competitive behavior as revealed by the actions and responses it takes while engaging in this competitive rivalry. So, okay. The first driver of competitive behavior is awareness. So awareness is really a prerequisite. So it is a must in a competitive action, no, into any competitive action or response taken by a firm. So this awareness, it refers to the extent of how aware is the company towards their competitors. So it is the degree of their mutual interdependence that the results from market commonality and resource similarity. So if they are aware on that particular market commonality and similarity of resources, so they could take advantage or they could get some actions, or their behavior will depend on that particular awareness. So the more they are aware, the more they are prepared. So for example, if there are problems that will be encountered in the future, so could they can prepare, they can plan for it, and if there are opportunities, so they can also prepare on how to strategize their competition. So awareness, it affects really on the extent, no, of the firm's understanding. It affects the extent to which the firm understands the consequences of its competitive actions and response. So whether they are what actions, what strategy they were pursuing. So this awareness will really help them on going further on their strategies. Motivation is the second driver in the competitive behavior of the firm. So it is concerned with the firm's incentive to take action or to respond to a competitor attack. So this incentive, it could be perceived gains or it could be perceived loss. So the firm, if they are aware that their competitors may not be motivated to engage in rivalry with them, so it could perceive their position and may not improve their market position because they won't be damaged if they would not respond. But if they are aware that their competitors are motivated to outrun them, so they will uh, study more strategies on how to compete with their competitors. So we know that in market commonality and also in the resource similarity, they have common, they have similarity. So this, of course, this will result to competition. So the more likely that the rival will attack, especially in low market commonality, so the one who compete and also the one who compete in multiple markets. So usually the reason there is to gain more advantageous position over your rival. So or either you want a greater market share or you want some multi-market competition over your competitor. So it really matters on your actions, no? Especially if you are really motivated to gain more profits and to gain more shares. So it's really a battle on the market, on the core market. So usually the firm here focus more on the core markets, the resources, the allocation of the resources, what would be their purpose on the market, what is the condition of their commonality, So this will motivate them, no, to respond to the competitor action. Either their competitor attack them or the competitor are complacent. So usually here, this will affect the behavior of the firm. The third driver of the competitive behavior is the ability. Ability relates to each firm's resources and the flexibility they provide. Without available resources such as financial capital and the people, the firm is not able to attack a competitor or respond to its actions. Say for example, for smaller and newer firms, even they have this innovative product, but generally they have fewer resources to attack larger and established competitors. Likewise also for foreign firms, they are often have disadvantage against their local firms, although they have this financial capital, but their social capital, their relationship with consumers, suppliers, and even government officials will um, will will lower their advantage over their competitors. So again, ability is very important, no? If you don't have the ability, you cannot compete with your competitors. Okay, this is the third component of our model on competitive reality. So actually, this is called competitive rivalry. So competitive rivalry is composed of competitive actions and competitive response. So when we say competitive action, this is a strategic or action the firm takes to build or defend its competitive advantage or improve its market position. While on the other hand, the competitive response is a strategic or tactical action the firm takes to counter the effects of a competitor's competitive action. Another keynotes here is the strategic action or response versus the tactical action or response. When we say strategic action or response, this is a market-based move that involves a significant commitment of organizational resources, and it's very difficult to implement and reverse. So one example here is the Nokia Corporation. Nokia Corporation partner with Microsoft to deliver an ecosystem with unrivaled global reach and scale. Actually, this action of Nokia Corporation is the strategic response to Apple's success. But take note, in 2013, however, there's a reverse strategy. Microsoft acquired Nokia cell phone business as a critical part of Microsoft mobile device strategy. And this is the strategic action of Microsoft. So again, Microsoft partnering with Nokia is their strategic action on going to the cell phone industry. Although on the part of Nokia, this is also their strategic response on the success of Apple. And they partner with Microsoft that this Microsoft will only deliver their product exclusive to Nokia. However, in 2013, Microsoft acquired Nokia cell phone business. And this is their strategic action to penetrate the mobile industry. So you see, it is difficult to implement and reverse. And now, when you can see it, Nokia is already, I don't know if Nokia is still existing nowadays, but I think Nokia is really have lower market share on the Nokia, on the mobile business. Next, tactical action or response. Tactical action or response is a market-based move that is taken to fine-tune a strategy. So it involves fewer resources and is relatively easy to implement and reverse. Common example here is the strategy of prices. Let's say, for example, um, what particular example here? Say, for example, a department store or a mall. They strategize their prices to make it cheaper, cheaper from other malls. So basically, it entices the customers to go there to their malls. But when they have already some customers there, they penetrate already loyalty of their customers, they will change the price. No, they will change the price taken by their competitors. So this is part of their strategy. This is part of their strategy to fine tune, no, their current strategy, of course, to gain market, to gain customers. So this is their tactical action or response. No, it has fewer resources and it's relatively easy to implement and reverse. Kasi you can also change. No, if that is not successful, you can change. No, your strategy. Okay. Part of the competitive rivalry component is the likelihood of attack. So in addition to market commonality, resource similarity, and the drivers of awareness, motivation, and ability, among the other factors which affect the likelihood that a competitor will use strategic actions and tactical actions to attack its competitors are first, mover benefits, organizational size, and quality. So we will discuss this on. Okay, a first mover is a firm that takes an initial competitive action in order to build or defend its competitive advantage or to improve its market position. So usually this first mover concept has been influenced now by the work of the famous economist Joseph Schumpeter, who argued that firms achieve competitive advantage by taking innovative actions. So, in general, this first mover emphasizes more on research and development since they are developing innovative goods and services that customers will value. So, usually the benefits of the successful first mover can be substantial. But however, this is not absolute. It is substantial, especially in the fast cycle market. This fast cycle market where the change really occurs rapidly, it's virtually impossible to sustain, especially for the late movers, second movers. So they cannot compete really on the first mover. So the first mover can have this advantage or competitive advantage for any length of time. The first mover in the market have several advantage, although this is not absolute advantage, but they have substantial advantage, especially on the fast market, because they can earn above average returns until its competitors respond to its competitive action. They can also gain the loyalty of their customers, who may become committed to the goods or services of the firm who first made them available. And they can also gain market share that can be difficult for competitors to take during future competitive rivalry, especially in the slack, because they have the buffer, they have the cushion, they can provide obtainable resources that are currently in use, and they have also excess or minimum resources needed to produce a given level of organizational output because they are the first mover in the market. So they have the buffer, they have several resources, they have extra inventory. However, this first mover carries also some risk, so because it's very difficult to estimate the returns that will be earned from introducing product innovation to the marketplaces. But yeah, there are benefits. And then we have also the second mover. Second mover is a firm that responds to the first mover's competitive action. Typically, through imitation, they imitate the services, or they imitate the product of the first mover. So they are more cautious that the first mover, the second mover studies customer reaction to product innovation, and they also try to find any mistakes of the first mover made. So as a second mover, the competitor will try to respond with a product that provides greater customer value than does the first mover product. So they imitate the services and the product of the first mover. We have also the late mover. So it is a firm that responds to a competitive action a significant amount of time after the first mover's action and second mover's response. So the late movers and also be successful if they develop a unique way to enter the market and compete. Say, for example, the Apple, they compete in the mobile business and they are now successful nowadays. Before the Nokia, they are part of the second mover in the mobile business, but now the Apple are late mover, but they are already successful. They compete, really compete, because they find ways, no, they research more on the previous actions of the first mover, the second mover. They innovate those mistakes of the first and the second mover. So it can mean that they need to learn from the competitors. They really learn, no, from the competitors in the market. So they produce their market that allow them to compete. They know the competitors and they do the move, no, on competing those things. Another one is the organizational size. So, an organization's size affects really the likelihood, no, it will take competitive action as well as the types and timing of those actions. So, when we study the competitor in terms of the organizational size, the firm should use a measurement such as total sales revenue or total numbers of employees. It's very important. This competitive action would likely encounter, no, from competitive, especially on the competitors larger scale, no, it's very difficult, no, to encounter from smaller competitors. So you can compete if you are a very large company, but for smaller competitors, so it's very difficult. um, this organizational size really add another layer of complexity, especially engaging in competitive rivalry. So because they have the capabilities already, if they are large organizations, so they have their unique competitive action. So here, a firm needs to have the amount of slack resources, no, at a larger scale. So usually, the successful company here holds a greater number of competitive actions. So simultaneously, they consider flexibility, no, in considering the actions and responses they are able to take. No, they also have variety actions. So collectively, these firms best serve competitive when their size permits them, especially on their capital, to take appropriate number of or unique or diverse competitive action and response to their competitors. So this really affect, no, on the actions of the business, or how would they would react if they have this bigger size, bigger capability. So they have also the bigger capital, so they can take action on their competitors. Next is quality. Actually, quality has many definitions, so it includes well-established ones relating to the production of goods or services with zero defects or cycles of continuous improvement. But from a strategic perspective, it is the outcome of how a firm competes through its value chain activities and support functions. So it exists when the firm's goods and services meet or exceed customer satisfaction, is also called quality, and it is most critical component especially in satisfying your firm's customer, because our customer is our bread and butter of this business. Quality service, quality product, it really affects competitive rivalry. So the firm evaluating a competitor whose products suffer from poor quality can predict the declines in the competitor's sales revenue until the quality issues are solved. So it's very important to know the quality product and the quality service you are going to achieve to your customers. So how would you measure quality? So how would you measure quality? So there are dimensions of quality. So we have the product quality dimensions and the service quality dimensions. So we have product quality dimensions, either performance, the features, the flexibility, the durability, the conformance, serviceability, what else? The aesthetics, what is it called? The perceived quality. So you have different dimensions on it. So it depends upon what particular dimensions you are going to perform. So either the features, really, the features, especially on the mobile business, no? And so the performance, so it depends upon what what dimensions you want to check on your product. For the service quality dimensions, we have also the timeliness, the courtesy, consistency, convenience, completeness, accuracy. So again, quality is very broad, so it depends upon how would you measure it, how do you deliver it, no? So really, you need to determine, no? You need to know if you have quality service, quality goods, quality products, so that you can compete with your competitor. Okay. The success of a firm's competitive action is affected by the likelihood that a competitor will respond to it, no, as well as the type, the strategic or tactical, the effectiveness of that response. So, as noted earlier, a competitive response is a strategic or tactical action the firm takes to counter the effects of the competitor's competitive action. So, in general, a firm is likely to respond to a competitor's action when either the action leads to a better use of the competitor's capabilities to develop a stronger competitive advantage or an improvement in its market position. It could also an action that will damage the firm's ability to use its core competencies to create or maintain an advantage, or it could be an action, no, to a firm's market position, which is harder to defend. So, in addition to market commonality and resource similarity and awareness, motivation and ability to predict how a competitor is likely to respond to a competitive action. So, there are three factors. So, first one is the type of competitive action. The second one is the actor's reputation. The third is the market dependence. Competitive responses to strategic action differs from responses to tactical action. So, as we have mentioned earlier, that strategic action requires greater resources and it's difficult to amend, while for tactical actions, smaller resources and it can be amended, no? So, there are different actions on it. So, strategic actions commonly receive, of course, strategic response and fewer competitive response, while on the other hand, the tactical actions have also, no, it can be responded, so it can be have more responses because it can be responded quickly. The next is the actor's reputation. So here we will determine who are the actors, no? In the context of the competitive rivalry, an actor is the firm taking an action or response, while the reputation is the positive or negative attribute ascribed by one rival to another, based on past competitive behavior. It could be a positive reputation, which is above average returns, or it could be a negative reputation. When you predict the likelihood of the competitor's response to a current or planned action, you need to evaluate the actor or the reputation of that actor, when it is attacked. You will you will study the past behavior and you will assume, this would be the behavior of this would predict the future behavior of your rival. So here you can determine whether this competitor is conservative or aggressive. So it depends upon the action of or the actor's reputation based on the historical past or historical actions of your competitor. The response of your competitor will also depend on the market dependence. When you say market dependence, so it denotes the extent, to which a firm's revenue or profits are derived from a particular market. So in general, those competitors with high market dependence, they strongly respond to attacks threatening their market position. But however, there are also instances that those threatened competitors or firm will not always respond quickly, even there is an effective response to the attacks on the firm's position. So either they will first study their position, or they want to get what would be the result of that action of the competitors before they will defend their market position. Next, competitive dynamics. Competitive dynamics is very concerned with the ongoing actions and responses of all firms competing within a market for advantageous purpose. Actually, there are three types of markets where there are competitive dynamics. Now, we have the slow cycle markets, the fast cycle markets, and the standard cycle markets. So let us discuss on this. Slow cycle markets are markets in which the firm's competitive advantages are shielded from imitation. So commonly for long periods of time and where imitation is costly. Thus, competitive advantage are sustainable of course, if you want to imitate it and very costly, so it's sustainable over long periods of time in a slow cycle market. For example, here is the car market, very costly, so it's very difficult for you to imitate. So you must have the funds or you have the capital to compete with your competitors. Competitive advantage really are sustainable, no? If that is the case for longer periods of time. So these companies on the slow cycle market have a long haul and have the enough resources and the capability to survive. Unlike on the fast cycle markets. The fast cycle markets, these markets in which the firm's capabilities that contribute to competitive advantage aren't shielded from imitation, and where imitation is often rapid and inexpensive. Thus, competitive advantages aren't sustainable in fast cycle markets. So, especially if you want to imitate it and that's very not costly, so it's not sustainable, no? If that product is can be imitated, especially China made, no, the China really imitate products, so it would not be sustainable in a fast cycle market. Firms competing in fast cycle markets recognize the importance of speed. These companies appreciate that time is as precious company resources as money or headcount. So there is a high velocity environment, no? So the high velocity environment place considerable pressures on the top managers to quickly make strategic decisions that are also effective. We have also the standard cycle market. So in the standard cycle market, these are markets on which the firm's competitive advantages are partially shielded from imitation, and imitation is moderately costly. So here, competitive advantages are partially sustainable, but only when the firm is able to continuously upgrade the quality of its capabilities as a foundation for being able to stay ahead of competitors. And because of large volumes, the size of mass markets, and the need to develop scale economies, the competition for market share is intense. So in summary, firms study competitive rivalry in order to predict the competitive actions and responses each of their competitors are likely to take. These competitive actions are either strategic or tactical in nature. So the firm takes competitive action just to defend or to build its competitive advantage or either to improve its market position. Thus, competitive responses are taken to counter the effects of a competitor's competitive action. So the competitive rivalry model is very important if you want to compete in the market. Thank you, and once again, please don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel. Okay? Thank you, guys.